Okay, so today we're gonna talking about the introduction of econometrics, and I want to share with you guys of my presentations. Okay, okay. Today's topic we're gonna talking about the introduction of econometrics. This is the materials that usually brought to students who are apprentice of economics major. So I hope you find any interest. If you find any interest, you can call me or you can email me just for further information. Okay, so the books that I used in econometrics is Econometrics by uh, this author. There is no specific books, but I want to recommend you the books that I used. It is from Gujarati and the Woolrich. This is a basic book of econometrics that mainly used in college for economics major. Okay, the first slide. What is econometrics? Econometrics is field of study of economy, mathematics, and statistics. Together, there's three field of study creating the new topic, and that is econometrics. For example, if I give you situation like there is um, poverty crisis in certain country, and we need to find determinants what causing the poverty. So to analyzing the situation, we could use the economics because we are studying many variable economics which can determine the poverty rate or cause. And then after we are define the variable that causes poverty, we can use statistics to gathering the data and to quantify the variables. For example, like the income per capita of each peoples in certain country or city, and then the consumption rate in monthly or annually, and many things in statistics. After we gathering the data, we are using statistics methods, and we are using the economics modelings. Of course, we are applying the mathematics field of study. The mathematics could be useful to calculate or forecasting the empirical situation. Mathematics is commonly used to solving the empirical problem, but when it comes to practically, you will need the complementary field of study like economy and statistics. So together, these three of field of study creating the econometrics. And econometrics is using two information. The first one, information from the economy theory, and the second one is information from data economy. Of course, we are defining the situations based on the theory because theory is justification of the empirical situations. The empirical situations is commonly can be defined by the theory because theory is uh, like the common situations that can be defined by mathematical or conceptual approach. After we define the information from the theory, we can define information from the data. For example, if I found that there is a positive relations between the poverty and the income, we should make a good policy to alleviating the poverty rate. So in empirical situations, this is the macroeconomic example of how the variable of economy interacts between many factors. There are so many arrows between variables, and you could study it in the economics, but I'm not talking much about how to define many of these variables. So by using theory and data, we could make conclusions, and the conclusion is helping combine the theory and the data so we can define good policies to alleviating or to solving our problems. And the conclusions should be recommendations which come by the numbers, or it should be regulations, or it should be just an idea, or maybe a recommendation for renewable theory. So there was three solution or conclusions that the economists can give. The first one is the numbers. We could give recommendations by numbers. For example, we can alleviating the poverty by creating at least 1 million job vacancy. That's a number. Then the second, we can conclude the or maybe given recommendation by creating the regulations. For example, if the poverty in West Java should uh, can be annihilated, the government should make regulations to limiting the non-domestic economic activity from outside West Java. So the economy in West Java cannot be disrupted. So the government of West Java is applying or implying the protective policy. And the third one, the government of West Java can create the recommendations by the verbal. They can creating the ideas for uh, the government, how should government works with the bureaucracy or everything. Yeah, this is the example of the mathematical approach. This is the consumption functions. Consumption is a function from the income. So my consumptions is based from my income. If my income is decreased or decreasing, it will affect my consumption rate. Uh, by the terms and condition apply. Um, there are so many conditions that goods and service can affect by the income. There was three kinds of goods and service: the normal goods and service, the superior goods and service, and the inferior goods and service. So each of them has different effect based from the income. Okay, so we can create the difference equations between demand and supply. The demand should be determined by many factors, including the oil price and then another factors. If we applying another factors, we are creating or we are disobey the ceteris paribus assumptions. That's a basic rule of macroeconomics. And the same goes way in the supply mathematical approach. So demand and supply is creating the market. Demand and supply is creating the transactions between seller and buyer, and when there are interacts, the economic activity remains. So how much or how many, how big or how much? So if the policies should be ineffective, it will need the number, and it should be like the measurements, how the policies can be effective. Like how should government is should to increasing the interest rates to prevent higher inflation rate. The second one is how much is tickets in the cinema should be increased in order to make the seat is seated, or the cinema is very occupancy. So the two question is should be have an answer, but to answer that two questions, we must define the relations between the interest rate and the inflations. And the ticket of the cinema will affect the occupancy rate in the cinema of the studio. And to answer how big or how much, we should estimate the parameter. There is two conditions, and we doesn't know. We always do not know the parameter is. And the second one is sometimes we are not observe that parameter. So this is a challenge for economists. We are always doesn't know. Can we isolate our variable from the outer rules that affects our research model or not? So we are using the error random or error term to isolate or to keep another factor is interrupting our model. For example, like when we trying to define consumption rate based from our income, uh, in commonly our consumption is not only determined by the income, right? It should be determined by the preference, the number of population, the substitute price, the subsidiary price, the complementary price, and everything. But we doesn't have the data, so we just have the consumption data and the income data. What should we do? We can create a model with an error term. So with an error term, we can isolate the not observing variable to stay there. So we don't have to worry to testing or estimating our models. But it does have consequences. Our model is having a weakness if we are doing that assumptions, especially when we are trying to estimate the independent and control variables. And yeah, we are talking about the kind of dependent variable. Dependent variable is our focus. Dependent variable is the reason why we why we doing our research, is our purpose. We need to find the common pattern. What factors that affecting this dependent variable? And it is called the explanatory variable or independent variable. Independent variable should be anything. You don't have to worry about the variable comes in quantitative or qualitative. You always have an options. You always have a way to define what the independent variables. You don't have to worry about that. So yeah, this is the econometry equations, or actually the mathematics. Uh, another names for y variable is so few, dependent, explained, predictant, regression, response, endogenous, and independent variable should be judging by many names like explanatory, independence, predictor, regressor, stimulus, or exogenous. And this is the models. I already explained it at the beginning. I hope you understand what I explained. And this is the illustration of the data. This is the time series data. What is time series? So I will give you simple definitions. Time series data is a couple of data that goes on different times, but the same individual. For example, we are doing to research. We are trying uh, to know, is there any relationship between the inflation rate and the economics of growth? So we are using time series data. Time series data is like 99% is a secondary data. So you are not collected it. You can find it on Department of Statistics, or you should gathering the data from a library, because the data is time series. So it's collected by our authority. So it's not of our responsibility to gathering of the data, because it is macroeconomics data and it should be big deal, for us to gathering by our own. So back to the topics. Yeah, as I mentioned before, we have to understand between, is there any relationship between the inflation rate and between the economic growth. So we're gathering the inflation rate and economic growth in the same exactly years, or maybe quarter, or we should uh, half year or anything. So I want to know, is there a relationship between the inflation rate, between the economic growth in the new order? So in the new order is 32 years exactly. So we're gathering the data variables of data economics uh, from inflation rate and economic growth from 1965 to 1997. It's 32 years length of data. So we can gathering that of data, and the data is annually. So you can find it on bottom up statistic, or we usually know it DBS. And that's it. That's the time series. And this is a cross-section data. Cross-section data is uh, the different individual that we observe, but in at the same exact time. So we are not have an issue in the time in the cross-section data, but we do have to collect it many variables. So basically, cross-section data is usually commonly used in qualitative research. If you want to understand, is there any relationship between the motivations to learning outcomes in students in schools? So you are commonly give them a questionnaire. The questionnaire is uh, mostly used to gathering the data. So I think that's quite useful. You know, you can create many questions, and then you can quantify their answer by ranking of their answers, and then you can define the common patterns. Oh, for example, oh, there is a positive relations between the motivation and learning outcomes, and the same goes both ways. Okay, so when you are trying to making econometrics analysis, you have to giving an example from your theories. The second one is you have to create the specifications from the mathematics from theories, and then you can gather data. You can create the estimations from the models, and then you can testing your hypothesis, and you can doing forecasting or predictions. You can create the recommendations for good policies. This is the example from the common pattern in econometrics. You can use the time series or sections, or you can doing it both ways at the same time. You can using the panel data, or you can using a limited model independent variable. You can use dummy in the dependent variable is based on your needs. So yeah. Okay, so I think that's my 2 cents. That's the quick or maybe 101 of my explained about the introduction of econometrics. So I hope you understand. In case you don't understand, you can email me. My email is below this video. You can email me anytime if you have further questions. I think uh, that is enough. Thank you for watching, and I hope you are doing best. Bye.